There's a particular kind of silence that feels different from other silences. It's the kind you chose, maybe reluctantly, maybe after a long time of trying, but you chose it. You stopped reaching out. You went quiet. And now you're sitting with the strange, uncomfortable question that comes after. What are they actually feeling right now? If the person you're thinking about has an avoidant attachment style, the honest answer is probably not what you'd expect. And understanding that gap between what you imagine and what's actually happening in their inner world can change the way you relate to this whole experience. When someone with an avoidant attachment style first notices your silence, there's often an initial response that looks, from the outside, a lot like nothing. No reaching out, no visible distress. Maybe they post something casual on social media. Maybe they seem to be moving through their days with a kind of undisturbed ease. And if you're the one who initiated no contact, especially if you did it hoping for some kind of reaction, that stillness can feel like a gut punch. But what's actually happening beneath that surface is more complicated than the stillness suggests. To understand it, you have to go back to where avoidant attachment comes from. Research by Cindy Hazen and Philip Shaver, published in 1987, was foundational in showing us that the way we attach to caregivers in early childhood becomes a kind of internal template, a working model for how we expect relationships to go in adulthood. For people who develop an avoidant style, that template was often shaped by environments where emotional needs were met with distance, dismissal, or inconsistency, not necessarily cruelty, sometimes just unavailability, a parent who was physically present but emotionally unreachable, a household where vulnerability was quietly discouraged. What a child learns in that environment is a form of emotional self-sufficiency that isn't really self-sufficiency at all. It's a survival strategy. And like all survival strategies formed in childhood, it doesn't disappear when the person grows up. It just follows them into their adult relationships, operating mostly below the level of conscious awareness. So when you go no contact, you're not just creating distance from a person, you're interacting with a nervous system that has spent years, sometimes decades, learning to interpret closeness as a potential threat and distance as safety. In the early days of your silence, what many avoidants experience is something psychologists call deactivation. It's a kind of internal dimming of attachment-related feelings. The pull they may have felt toward you gets turned down. They find reasons, often subconsciously, to minimize what the relationship was. They focus on incompatibilities. They remember the moments of friction more vividly than the moments of warmth. This isn't something they're necessarily doing on purpose. It's the system doing what the system was built to do, protecting itself from the discomfort of wanting someone. Mario Mikulincer and Philip Shaver, who have spent years studying adult attachment, described deactivating strategies as the avoidance primary tool for managing what would otherwise feel like overwhelming emotional need. The mechanism is efficient, and from the outside, it reads as indifference. But here's what's important to understand about deactivation. It has limits. It works well when there's something to push against. When you're present, texting, calling, showing up emotionally, the avoidance system has something to deactivate in response to. The very act of your pursuit gives the mechanism something to do. But when you go quiet, when the pursuit stops entirely, the mechanism starts running in circles. There's nothing incoming to deflect. And in that vacuum, something starts to shift. It doesn't happen immediately. This is one of the hardest parts for people who care about someone avoidant. The shift doesn't come in the timeline you're hoping for. A 2010 paper by Mickelinser and Shaver in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology noted that avoidant individuals do register emotional responses to relationship disruption. They simply suppress them with a degree of efficiency that anxiously attached people rarely manage. The feeling is there. It just gets processed later in private without any outward signal. Think about what that actually looks like in practice. Someone with a deeply avoidant style might go 2, 3, 4 weeks appearing completely fine, and then, quietly, in a moment that has nothing to do with you, something surfaces. Maybe they're driving and a song comes on. Maybe they're lying in bed at night after a long day and the silence in the room feels different from usual. It's not dramatic, it's not a breakdown, it's more like a slow, dawning awareness that something that used to be there isn't anymore. And that awareness can be disorienting for them, because avoidants often don't fully understand in real time how much someone matters to them. Their own emotional data is frequently delayed, filtered, or filed away before they've had a chance to actually feel it. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that avoidant individuals reassess the significance of a relationship most meaningfully during periods of actual sustained loss, not threatened loss, but real absence over time. The distance you've created isn't just empty space to them. On some level, it's information, and their nervous system eventually starts to process it. What that processing looks like varies enormously from person to person. Some avoidants, when they finally sit with the absence long enough, do experience something recognizable as longing, a desire to reach out, a softening of the defenses that had kept the relationship at arm's length. For others, the processing happens inwardly and silently. They feel something, but the gap between feeling it and expressing it remains too wide to cross. It's also worth saying clearly, understanding this doesn't mean no contact is a strategy for getting someone back. That framing tends to backfire, especially with avoidance. They are almost universally sensitive to feeling managed. If they sense, even faintly, that your distance is calculated, that the silence is a move in a game, it activates exactly the kind of wariness their attachment style is built on. The message they receive isn't "this person has boundaries," it's "this person is trying to control the dynamic." And that tends to push them further inward, not pull them closer. What that no contact communicates most powerfully to an avoidant when it comes from a genuine place is something they rarely encounter from people who are close to them. It communicates that you are not indefinitely available for a relationship that costs you more than it returns, that your presence is not unconditional, not as a manipulation, just as a fact. And that specific kind of message tends to land differently than any direct conversation about needs or feelings ever could, because it doesn't ask them to respond, it simply exists. There's also something worth noting about what happens to you during this period. The urge to interpret every small signal, a view on a story, a mutual friend's comment, a delayed response to something unrelated, is a very human response to uncertainty. But it's worth recognizing that the story you're constructing from their silence is almost always incomplete. The avoidant's internal experience during no contact is far more layered than their external behavior suggests. The stillness on the surface is not the whole picture. And perhaps that's the most useful thing to carry out of understanding avoidant psychology in this context. Not a prediction of what they'll do next, not a timeline for when they'll reach out, just a more accurate sense of what's actually happening behind a face that seems unmoved. They are not people who feel nothing. They are people who learned very early that feeling things openly was not safe. The silence you're experiencing from them is not evidence of absence, it's evidence of a very old and very practiced kind of protection. Understanding that doesn't resolve anything overnight. It doesn't make the waiting easier or the uncertainty more comfortable, but it does offer something real, a more complete picture of a person who, somewhere behind all that stillness, is doing something more complicated than simply not caring. And sometimes, knowing that is enough to change how the silence feels.